Hello, guys and gals, and welcome. So it's ladder reset day. That's right. We got ladder reset in what, 3 hours and 15 minutes. And I thought maybe, hey, why not? Let's do a quick Theorycraft. Uh, I was talking about this yesterday, pretty much all yesterday, when we were doing the barbarian run, just after I made the other Theorycraft, which the other Theorycraft will be up today as well. If you guys want to check that out, it's the barbarian Thor build with the double frickin' crescent moons and spamming chain lightning out of his frickin' arsehole. Which is par for the course for barbarians, to be honest. I mean, nothing special. But today we're going to be making a destruction wolf. So the goal of this is to synergize the volcano from destruction. If you guys have never taken a look at destruction, destruction has a pretty huge chance to cast a molten boulder, a pretty huge chance to cast a volcano, and it's just in general just a very powerful weapon to spam abilities. Now I'm not really quite sure exactly which one I want to do. I have a thresher, which is obviously going to be a hell of a lot faster and might potentially be the better option. But I also have a phase blade, because you can make destruction a phase blade or a thresher, either one. I went ahead and give myself a treachery for right now, just simply because I think I'm going to need the attack speed, and obviously flickering flame is a no-brainer. We need to go ahead and give ourselves some generic stuff here real quick. So first off, we definitely want the Chimichamis. We need an Annihilus Charm, and we're also definitely going to need our Torch. Because Annihilus and Torch are definitely the items that will help us, you know, like a lot in terms of multi-specking like this. Whenever you make one of these builds that has just in general a large amount of point expenditure, I guess would be the term, because we are going to have a very large amount of point expenditure. In fact, we're going to need shapeshifters skillers, so we're going to go ahead and put in some shapeshifter skillers here, since I'm already in this category. Now, you might be asking why shapeshifter skillers and not elemental skillers? Aren't we making an elemental build? Elemental skillers don't help us. That's the problem. So when you do a procking build, which is where you have an effect which is being procced from an item, the level of the proc is always static. It's stuck at the level that the item allows. Now that doesn't mean that you can't enhance it. You can enhance it by building the synergies. So that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be building the synergies for the effect, and then we're going to be calculating out the amount of damage that you can get that way. But it's not going to be the same as plus the skill equipment. So plus elemental skill equipment is not going to help us at all when it comes to this particular build. So we're going to want plus shape-shifting skills as much as we can get. And we also need the torch here. Let's go ahead and give ourselves a cube. I never run without a cube. I don't like to make builds without the cube. I honestly think that anybody that makes a build without a cube is probably just being silly, because you need the cube. Honestly, it's like not having a thumb, or like just slicing off one of your arms. It's impossible. I'm not exactly sure if we're going to have resistance issues here, but we should be okay. Now, when it comes to proccing effects, we definitely have a lot of options, but we need attack speed more than we need more proccing effects, even though there are some other interesting items we could throw into the mix. And trying to think here. Trying to think if a pair of blood gloves would be best, or if we'd be better off with something else entirely. You know what I think we'll do for this particular build? This will be a unique build. We're going to use the two-piece set bonus. So we're going to grab the normal death set. This is going to be one of the few times you'll see me use the death set, because I don't want to utilize a Ravenfrost here. I actually want to use something else. So we're going to have some fun with that. I want more procs, basically. The more procs, the better. So we're going to utilize a Carrion Wind, which is a procking item. So we definitely want a Carrion Wind in here. Unique jewelry, rings, carrion wind. We're going to use a carrion wind. Carrion wind has a 8% chance to cast level 13 twister, which is going to give us a nice little micro stun, which is going to be nice. And then for our other ring, try to think what we want. We do need some sort of mana leech, but we don't necessarily have to have it on the ring slot. I would like as much attack speed as possible, though. So let's go with a really nice blood ring. Blood. Has the Singer Barb been buffed? A little bit in group play, but not really anything else other than group play. Looking for a dual leecher. We need a nice dual leech ring. I know I have a nice dual leech ring in here somewhere. Havoc Band. Oh, yeah, that's dual leech. All right, sure. Why not? We'll use that. All right, for the boots. What do we want for the boots? I mean, there's a lot of boot choices. Invariably, it usually ends up coming down to freaking, when it comes to melee classes, you really want, like, the freaking delicious gore riders, because the gore riders just, they have so many nice little effects on them. But there may be other options. As far as attack speed goes, we've got 45% IAS coming from the armor. We've got 30% IAS coming from the Death's Hand gloves. And then, honestly, we probably need even more IAS. So I'm looking at High Lords will probably be our amulet because it does have IAS on it. We got the Mana Leech from here. That should be good enough as far as our skills go. Let's go ahead and grab some charms here. Not unique charms. Miscellaneous. We need regular chams, small chammies. And what do we want for this particular build? Attack rating charms would probably be our preference. Not attack rating damage, but just like massive amount of attack rating charms. I don't know if there's an attack rating charm in here, though. So, I mean, I don't really want to go with 320/20s, but it's just the easy option right now. And I'm lazy, so just go ahead and throw those in. Alright, so everything's set up for the character. We need to actually finagle his skills. Let's go ahead and import some items for the mercenary real quick. And then we're also going to import perfect... not perfect emerald. We need 2 perfect demons, not flawless demons. Why did I do a flawless demon? I need a perfect demon, 2 perfect demons. We also need 2 shale runes and 2 towel runes. Shale. We're going to upgrade the death set. That's basically what we're going to be doing. We can actually double upgrade it, which, you know what, let's just go ahead and grab both sets of runes. So the double upgrade would be Lem. Alright. And I believe that is finished. So he should be perfectly set up now. So let's go ahead and save him. We're going to copy him over real quick. Give me just a second. And then we're going to boot up the game. We're going to go test him out. We're going to go steal some merc gear from somebody else. It's not that big of a deal. Alright, so he should be copied. Alright, I think my sound is muted over here, so you guys can't hear the game. That should fix that. Yeah, okay. Alright, so the Hell Wolf. What's up, James? How's it going? Alright, first things first, let's get his equipment actually running so that he can actually utilize it. So we're going to need a pretty decent amount of strength so that we can put on the Phoenix shield. We also need a significant amount of dexterity so that we can wield the Thresher. Even more dexterity to wield the Destruction Phase Blade. So one way or the other. Now, I'm hoping that this way actually works because the Destruction Phase Blade may be the better option. But this is definitely the faster option. And so it comes down to, I'm not really sure which one's going to be the better choice. The Phoenix Monarch Shield, though, does have a 40% chance to cast level 22 Firestorm on striking, which means that when using the Destruction Phase Blade with the Phoenix Shield, you actually gain an additional proc, which is going to help out immensely. I had some issues with the negative resistance on the Phoenix Shield not working, and it's not. So we're going to have to go snatch a Phoenix Shield from my girl over here. She has one that actually works. I don't know what's wrong with the Phoenix Shield, but some of the Phoenix Shields, when I import them with the file, the negative res doesn't actually work, so I have to pay attention to that sometimes when I'm running the builds. It looks like the negative res is working on this Phoenix Shield, so we should be fine to swap this one over. Alright, does she also have the Mercenary with the equipment? No, she does not. We're going to steal a mercenary real quick from somebody. One way or another. And then we're going to set up the skills how I think they need to be set up. I'm not entirely 100% sure how we're going to set the skills up. This is going to be an interesting thing to take a look at. We're going to have to make some sacrifices when it comes to the way that this character is built. And this is my Theorycraft character from earlier. So this video will actually be up today as well. I've got it already uploading. This is the Thor Barbarian build that I did utilizing 2 crescent moons. It actually worked out really good, spoiler. But if you want to check out that video on YouTube, it will be up later today so you guys can have a look at it. It was actually a really fun one, to be honest. I had a lot of fun building this one. Squeeze the Dariel's Visage in here somewhere. Pardon the messy inventory. This was my solo self-found Barbarians run. I actually just finished him, by the way. He's completely done. And I had a lot of fun doing the solo self-found P8 Barbarian. That was freaking great. Alright. So, let's go ahead and get our items upgraded first before we start anything else. So we need our shale, our towel, and our perfect diamond. We're going to upgrade the Death's Guard Sash to the Death's Guard Demon Sash. Then we're going to upgrade the Death's Guard Demon Sash to the Spiderweb Sash. That's going to get us a little bit more defense out of that, which is nice. Then we're going to upgrade the gloves from the Death's Hand Gloves to the Demon Hand Gloves. And then we're going to upgrade the Demon Hand Gloves to the Bramble Mitts. That'll get us a tiny bit more defense there as well. So the 2-piece bonus from Death's Hand is going to get us the 30% increased attack speed, 8% life leech, the 50% poison resistance, the 75% poison length reduction, and then also the all resistances 15 on the belt that cannot be frozen, and of course the little bit of defense that we get from both pieces. All in all, the combo basically gives us everything that we need. We need cannot be frozen, we need increased attack speed, both of which we're getting. So we got 30% increased attack speed from the gloves, 45% increased attack speed from the armor, and 20% increased attack speed from the amulet. So we're running a pretty sick amount of increased attack speed between all these items. And then, of course, there's the fact that we're using a phase blade on this hand. Now, believe it or not, the phase blade is actually slower than the thresher. So the thresher is actually much faster than the phase blade, and the reason why is just because of the innate increased attack speed that the druid gets while in shapeshifted form. But we're definitely going to take advantage of as much as we can. And the Phoenix is just kind of ridiculous in terms of what it does for this build. So we're probably going to be seeing if we can make this work one way or another. But if for some reason we can't get enough speed out of the phase blade, we will go to the thresher. That's why I've got that as the backup. Alright, so armor for the Merc. So we've got a Duress here, we've got an Infinity, and we've got the Andes Visage. Alright, so let's just go grab a Merc real quick. What Merc do we want for this build? We don't necessarily need Might, because Might, we're not necessarily a physical damage build. Holy Freeze would always be nice, but we may have issues with attack rating, and I'd like to get as much attack rating as possible. So we're just going to go ahead and we're going to do a Blessed Aim Merc, because this is an elemental build, and we're not really worried about physical damage so much as we're worried about elemental damage. And we also need to make sure that we're actually hitting our targets. It's more important that we land the hits than it is that we dish out lots of damage while we're landing the hits. I know that sounds kind of strange, but that's how elemental builds work. And I think Blessed Aim will just generally have a much better effect for us as a whole. Alright, so stats seem okay, so let's go ahead and dump everything else into our Vitality. That brings us up to 1459 HP, which is pretty darn good. Of course, we do have these two janks in here, and also these two janks, which are giving us a pretty large amount of life, so keep that in mind. For skill points, we definitely have to put at least 1 point into the Wolf, 1 point into Lycanthropy. We also have to put in 1 point into Feral Rage. We're going to go down and we're going to grab Fury no matter what. And then we have to go through the Bear form and grab the Fire Claws. We're going to dump 20 points into Fire Claws. And it's because Fire Claws is going to be our main attack and Fury is going to be our sub-attack between the two. So we're going to go ahead and just dump 20 points directly here. Alright, now for this side of the tree, we don't really care about everything on this. We only care about what we need for the proccing effects. Also what we need for Fire Claws. So what we need for Fire Claws is Firestorm and Molten Boulder. So let's go ahead and drop 20 points into Firestorm and 20 points into Molten Boulder, which still leaves us with 36 to play around with. Now let's take a look at our weapon. Our weapon says 23% chance to cast level 12 Volcano. Now the important thing here is that we do not need Volcano, because the skill level of the Volcano is decided by the item. So the skill here, we don't actually need the Volcano here to up the damage. We need the Volcano synergies. So the two Volcano synergies are Fissure, Molten Boulder, and then of course we also have the fire damage per level, which is from Armageddon. So Molten Boulder already got maxed out to max out Fire Claws, so that's good. We also have the Fissure proc on the Phoenix. So, sorry, the Firestorm proc on the Phoenix. So if we take a look at the Firestorm synergies are Molten Boulder and Fissure. So again, we've got Fissure in the mix. So according to this, if we want to max out Volcano and Firestorm from the two items that we have, so Firestorm needs to be maxed out and Volcano needs to be maxed out, then we have to max out Molten Boulder and we have to max out Fissure. So Fissure is going to be our next hit right there. It's going to be all the rest of our points, basically. That's going to get us level maxed out synergy for Firestorm. And then we have the Volcano doesn't need points. So we don't need to spend any points in Volcano except for the fact to increase Armageddon's damage. But I'm not really too worried about Armageddon. It's really just an extra at this point. We are going to put, this is kind of silly, but we are going to put 1 point into Arctic Blast. And that's going to give us a slight stun length increase on Twister. And then we're also going to grab 1 point in Cyclone Armor. And we really can't afford a lot of extra points here and there, so we're just going to dump 1 point in Oak Sage. And then everything else is going to go into Armageddon. This should give us a pretty good setup as far as I can tell. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to have Fire Claws on our main click. We're going to have Fury on our sub click. We're going to use, let's see here, one... We get our werewolf farm.
Not in town.
And I think that should be good. So our Fire Claws is hitting for 12k per hit. But what's more important is we have level 22 Firestorms at a 40% chance that are going to be fully synergized. So those are going to be coming out nonstop. We also have 23% chance to cast level 12 Volcano, which are going to be coming out all the time, which are fully synergized. And then we have the 5% chance to cast level 23 Molten Boulder. Now, Molten Boulder is not going to come out very often, but Molten Boulder is Volcano and Firestorm. Volcano is the damage per level, so our Molten Boulder's not really going to do as much damage as it probably would. But Firestorm will increase the fire damage portion of it. So it's really kind of unfortunate because we just don't have a lot of points. We can't really max out everything. I wish we could. But it's... Yeah, the 5% chance to form the Molten Boulder is so low that it's probably just like not even going to happen most of the time. 23% chance is a lot, 40% chance is a lot, but 5% chance for the Molten Boulder isn't really enough to signify building around, I feel like. Let's see here. Our attack rating doesn't look that awful. 7,964 is not garbage. It's not really the greatest either, though. Let's go ahead and put Armageddon on our right click. And we need a Fire Sunder. We need a Fire Sunder. Hold on. Before we go running out into the wilderness without it, let me go steal a Fire Sunder real quick from somebody. I believe Magma Flow probably has one. What's up, walking dude? Alright. Fire Sunder in. What's up, Hero Felt? And let's grab this Fire Sunder real quick. Alright, so our resistances aren't looking the greatest, but we do have Treachery on, which means as soon as the Fade procs, our resistances should be a lot better. In fact, let's go proc this Treachery real quick, because I just want to see what the resistances are going to be once we get everything set up. If you guys are unaware, you can totally proc your Treachery by standing in the fire out here. Alright, so once our Treachery procs, we're sitting at 72, 75, 80, 75, which is pretty darn good. That's excellent. Alright, so to start off, let's test this in Players 1. So I'm just making sure we're on Players 1 here. A freaking Umrun. Alright. That's some hacks. Well, P1 seems to work really well. Let's change this to P8, shall we? That was actually kind of embarrassing in P1. Monsters didn't even stand a chance. Let's swippy swap this around a little bit. And let's change this to P8 and let's see how he does under P8 conditions. Alright, so now we're on Players 8. A little bit more of a challenge. I'd say he's doing pretty good. Did I already play around with the crazy Nova build? No, not yet. I was actually thinking about that too. So yesterday we were theorycrafting a whole lot of builds, and one of the ones that we theorycrafted was this one. We were talking about it anyway. And then yesterday we were also talking about a crazy Nova build, which is basically like a Nova spammer. And I don't know if it's actually going to work, but we could always try and theorycraft it. The amount of volcanoes that come out of this frickin' character is insane. So this character's doing really damn good. I'm not even gonna lie. He's got 13 to 14k fire damage on his fire claws. He's got negative 42% enemy fire resistance. He's rocking some pretty great increased attack speed. And his damage output is kind of hard to calculate because obviously he's got the Armageddon going, which is one form of damage, but he also has the Volcano. Now, to figure out exactly what the hell his Volcano damage is, we have to actually look up these skills. So, first we're going to look up the Volcano skill, and we're going to run these numbers real quick. Real quick. So, first off, he has level 12 Volcano, which is coming out. Alright. Level 12 Volcano is a damage of 38 to 40 with a fire damage of 42 to 44. It doesn't seem like a lot. But it's a lot more than it seems. So let's pull this up and let's actually run these numbers. So we've got 38 to 40 damage, and then we've got 42 to 44 damage. So those are our two numbers. And then let's also pull up Firestorm. So Firestorm, and Firestorm is at level 22. So we need the level 22 numbers for Firestorm. Man, this website has the most ads on it, I swear. And of course we don't have exactly level 22 numbers here. Let's try Amazon Basin. Amazon Basin has less ads on it anyway. Alright, so level 22 is 424. Did I pull up the right skill? Yeah, I did pull up the right skill. So, 424? Yeah, 424 to 492. Alright, so there's our damage output for the two abilities in their base form. So this is not base damage. We're not looking at base damage. We're looking at synergistic damage. So we need to find out what the synergies are. So the synergies for Firestorm are 23% per level. 23% per level from both effects. Yeah, both effects. So we have a total of 23 times 40, which is a 920% increase, so plus 920% for Firestorm. Then we also have the Volcano, which Volcano gets a 16% damage bonus per level from Molten Boulder and a 12% from Fissure. So we're going to have to add those up separately. So 16 times 20 is 320. And then we also get the 12% times 20. It's 240. So plus 320. So we're looking at a 560% bonus for the Volcano. And then we can run those numbers. So let's take the average damage. So 424 plus 492 is 916 divided by 2, which gives us 458 is our average damage. Plus 920% means we're dishing out an average damage of 4,671.6 per Firestorm. And then our Volcano, which Volcano is a little strange because Volcano kind of shoots out, just shoots out stuff all over the place, right? So I'm pretty sure this is for each individual damage segment, so each individual little tiny hit, and there's a lot of hits, so it doesn't seem like a lot, but when you actually cast Volcano, when you actually see how it functions, you notice that it just shoots out tons of little fireballs. Each one of the little fireballs, I'm pretty sure, is the damage number. So even though it doesn't seem like a lot by the calculation here, it's actually a lot more than it seems. So it looks like 39 damage is our average. So 39 plus 560%. So we've got 257 damage. Well, yeah, 257 damage per volcano ball. And those are happening all the time, of course, too. And we also have the Fire Claws damage itself. So the Fire Claws damage is 13 to 14k per hit. So we've got like a whole bunch of crazy stuff going on. Just in general, I mean, between the 4,671 damage Firestorms, between the 257 damage Volcano balls that are shooting all over the place, and then we also have the actual hits themselves coming from the wolf. It's a lot of crazy stuff just going on the screen. And then we also have the destruction also does the level 22 Nova every single time. It's like 15% chance to have level 22 Nova, so it's always coming off all the time. The Nova is not central to the build or anything, but it's certainly extra damage. Ooh, spicy. Frickin' mighted Erdars are never fun to play with, I tell you. So one issue with using the Phase Blade, and let's talk about this real quick, because as you can see, I almost died. One issue with using the Phase Blade in this build is that it doesn't really do a lot of physical damage. And for your Life Leech to actually work, even though I do have a pretty healthy amount of Life Leech, I'm running 27% Life Leech right now. For that Life Leech to actually work, I need to actually have physical damage in the mix. And if you go to like a regular attack here, you'll see I'm only doing about 1,734 physical damage, which isn't anywhere near as much as like a regular Fury Druid would ever do. So one of the weaknesses of this build is that you've got a lot of elemental damage, you've got a lot of fire damage, you've got a lot of crazy stuff going on that is, you know, like not physical, but you don't have a lot of actual physical damage in the mix, which is part of the issue. Dracul's Gloves doesn't fix the issue because you need physical damage to actually get the leech. Dracul's also works on physical damage, so you need more physical damage. Now, one way that you could potentially fix this is just to add more and more Life Leech to the point of absurdity, and one way to do that is Feral Rage. So Feral Rage will actually give you a pretty healthy amount of Life Leech if you stack it. At level 12, it already has given me a pretty good amount. So what you might have to do with this particular build to actually make sure that you're staying alive is you might have to actually stack Feral Rage before you go into the fight and start actually killing stuff. This way you'll have a massive amount of Life Leech, and that should compensate for the fact that you don't really have a lot of actual damage output. And to do that, pretty much all you have to do is just attack with Feral Rage a couple times, build up that orb around yourself. You know, build up that big orb around yourself so that you've got that extra Life Leech. And with the Feral Rage, as you can see, now I have 63% Life Leech, which should compensate for the fact that my melee damage is very low. I mean, as you can see, the Volcano just keeps spouting out, like, just tons and tons of bullcrap all over the place. I mean, in many ways, this is literally just a Fire Claws build that also happens to use Destruction and Phoenix, and takes advantage of the fact that, I mean, as a Fire Claws Druid, you have to put points in Firestorm. You have to put points in Molten Boulder. You've got to build over here in this tree, right? So you're basically just taking advantage of the fact that, hey, I'm building in this tree, so why not utilize other abilities as well? Why not have, you know, like destruction with the frickin' volcano procs, the molten boulder procs, Phoenix with the frickin' fissure procs, you know, and various things like that. Of course, flickering flame helps out because it has the +3 fire skills and the negative fire resistance, and you need as much negative fire resistance as you can. Treachery might not be the best choice for this build, even though you do want the increased attack speed. You might be better off with something that gives you more negative fire res. The more negative fire res, the better. Because obviously pretty much all your attacks here are fire-based damage. Your firestorm that's coming out is fire damage. Your volcanoes that are coming out are fire damage, and they also have a little bit of physical attached to them as well. So it's a little bit of both. And that's kind of what I forgot to calculate over here, is that this is not just not just physical, it's also fire. So it's fire and physical. And if you want the fire damage, you have to build Armageddon. And if you want the physical damage, you have to build Molten Boulder. I may have run the calculations wrong, unfortunately. So Volcano's damage is going to be a little bit more strange than I calculated it out. The Molten Boulder is going to affect the fire damage, the physical damage specifically. So you're going to have full physical damage increase from the Fire Claws, because you have to build Molten Boulder anyway. But the fire damage, you'd have to stack up Armageddon, and I don't have Armageddon maxed. In fact, I don't have all the abilities maxed. I would need to max Volcano 2 to max the Armageddon to get that as high as possible. But, I mean, you do have pretty much everything running here. I mean, you've got your Armageddon, you know, you've got your Fire Claws damage, you've got your Volcanoes, your Fissures, I mean, the Novas. I mean, you're literally just spamming freaking everything on the ground, dishing out as much fire damage as you possibly can dish out. And by the time you're done, like, everything in the world is going on. There's fire raining from the sky. There's fire shooting up from the ground. The ground is on fire. You know, it's really stupid. Like just the amount of visual effects that are on the screen. Kind of looks like an MA-SIN in some ways, like literally with all the effects that are constantly going on. I mean, it literally looks like Armageddon. I mean, I hate to say it. I know that's the name of the skill and everything, but it looks more like Armageddon than the actual Armageddon skill, because you've got the frickin' fire raining from the sky, you've got the fire shooting out of the ground, you've got the fire on the ground, you got literally just like everything visually that can be going on possible at that particular moment. I mean, yeah, as a wolf you can't teleport, which is always going to be an issue. Let's talk about the expense of this build, though. So I feel like this is an important part of the conversation, is we have to talk about how much this build costs. So, expense-wise, let's go back to town so we don't have a bunch of random noises in the middle of our talk. So, expense-wise, number one, Death's Hand, super cheap to come by. You don't have to double upgrade it. You can just single upgrade it, and that's fine. Death's Sash, also, you can just single upgrade that. Not a big deal cost-wise. Carrion Wind ring is not really that big of a deal either, and those twisters are actually really nice to have in the mix. I didn't even talk about those twisters before, but I do have those little twisters coming out all the time, and they're stunning everything, which is very helpful. This ring, a dual leecher ring, I mean, this ring particularly is super expensive, but you really just need a dual leech ring, something with mana leech on it, because you're going to need some mana leech. Your cannot be frozen is already taken care of, so it's really just finding a decent dual leech ring. Gore Riders are not really that expensive. They usually become pretty common at some point during the game. Shape-shifting skillers with 40 life obviously are really expensive, but you don't need shape-shifting skillers with 40 life. Just shape-shifting skillers in general. Anything on them additional would be nice, but that's fine. Attack rating charms, probably more so than max damage attack rating charms, would be preferable. 320/20 is not really all that important. You'd be better off with raw attack rating ones. I believe you can get like 35 or 40 attack rating on a small charm, and then you can get some other effect with it. So getting attack rating charms would probably be better than max damage charms, which aren't really that expensive. Attack rating charms are not super duper expensive. Torch, Druid Torches tend to be pretty cheap, and obviously Annies tend to be pretty cheap after a certain point, so both of those are pretty easy to come by. Flickering Flame is just a Vex and a Pull, which is a pretty cheap rune word, although finding the base to actually put it in with, like the Armageddon, the Fury, the Fire Claws, etc., that's going to be kind of expensive. So be on the lookout constantly as you're leveling up if you want to do this for your perfect Flickering Flame helmet. That's definitely going to be something crazy. Obviously, Phoenix is Vex, Vex, low jaw, so that's super expensive. 2 Vex runes, a low rune, and a jaw rune is not cheap. So getting your Phoenix shield for this build is going to be pretty ridiculous. Almost as ridiculous as getting the base for the Flickering Flame. Now, it doesn't have to be a +3, +3, +3. Just a +3 Fire Claws would be fine, or a +3 Fire Claws with some Armageddon on it. You might be asking why Armageddon when I talked about how plus the skills for this side of the tree doesn't affect anything. Well, Armageddon is the only skill that you actually cast. So you don't cast Volcano, it's on a proc. You don't cast Fissure, you don't cast Molten Boulder, it's on a proc. And you don't cast Firestorm, it's on a proc. So plus the skills will not help Firestorm, plus the skills will not help Molten Boulder, plus the skills will not help Fissure, and it will not help Volcano. However, plus the skills will help Armageddon. So because you're actually casting Armageddon, that is the one skill that you actually do want plus the skills for, because you're going to be casting that on a regular basis. As for the other stuff, it's pretty much just shape-shifting things, like maybe Fire Claws, Fury, maybe you want some Werewolf and some Lycanthropy so you can have more points in that. Alternatively, you could also, instead of going with a Flickering Flame, you could probably go with Metamorphosis. Metamorphosis has +5 shapeshifting and might overall be better damage output because it's going to give you more Werewolf, it's going to give you more Lycanthropy, it's going to give you more Fire Claws, it's going to give you more Feral Rage, which is in turn going to give you more Lifesteal, and it's also going to give you more Fury, which is going to be useful in certain situations. So Metamorphosis might be the better helmet for this build, although you will lose a little bit of that negative resistance from the Flickering Flame. You'll still get the -28 from the Phoenix, but in my opinion, I think you might be better off with the Flickering Flame because that brings you to a nice healthy -42% res. And then the weapon. So if the shield isn't already expensive enough, the weapon is Vex Low Bur Jaw Co, which is again super duper expensive. So we're talking about a pretty ridiculous build between these two items. So to get yourself a Destruction and to get yourself a Phoenix is going to be two of the hardest parts of this build. On top of that, the actual base for your helmet will be very difficult to find. So it's really between these three items right here, which is the bulk of the build. Everything else, for the most part, is fairly cheap and fairly easy to come by. Treachery is fairly cheap and fairly easy to come by. Death Set, fairly cheap and easy to come by. Carrion Winds are pretty cheap. Gore Riders are pretty cheap. +1 Shapeshift Skillers are usually pretty cheap. As we know for a fact, the Sunder Charms are super duper cheap, actually. And the fire ones and poison ones especially tend to get thrown away instead of actually, given to people. And then High Lords is slightly expensive early on, but eventually it gets to the point where that's pretty cheap too later on in the ladder cycle. Mercenary equipment, Infinity is pretty expensive. So first off, we've already got what 1, 2 Bur Jaw. Let's just make Bur Jaw equivalent. All right. So 1, 2, 3. We got 2 lows. So let's combine the lows and just say 4 Burs. And then we've got Bur Mal Bur. So that's 5, 6 Burs. So this is like very easily a 6 Bur or 7 Bur build. Which is pretty damn expensive. So if you're going to try this build out, you're going to have some runages sitting around. Now, here's the really cool thing, though. Phoenix is a very versatile shield. Making a Phoenix is not exactly going to be a horrible thing. It's not like you're making something that nobody else is going to use. You can utilize this on a Blade Fury Sin. You can utilize it on a Paladin. You can utilize it on a freaking Fire Sorceress. You can utilize it on a Fire Druid. It's a very versatile shield and very nice to make for your account. Infinity also very nice to make for your account. So something that you can share between all your characters. So once you have one infinity, you can share that between everybody, right? Destruction, on the other hand, is not a very versatile item. Not many characters actually utilize this item to their advantage, and it's honestly kind of like a shunned item that doesn't really even get used all that often. Number one, because it's super expensive, and number two, because there's a whole bunch of better items out there that work better than it. It's usually relegated to niche builds like this one, and making this particular rune word is not going to help out your account as a whole, basically, is what I'm saying. Although you could potentially throw it on like a Act 5 mercenary just for laughs, which I think would be pretty funny. Just like you're like, does your freaking merc have a destruction? Like, yeah, shut up, mind yourself. Who cares if he's putting volcanoes over the place? I don't care. And then the helmet also. So the helmet is also very specific, because if you're making it in a pelt, it's not going to be usable on a sorceress like a fire sorc. You're not going to be able to put it on your fire trap sin. You're not going to be able to throw it on your fire Amazon. So these two items right here are going to be very specific to the build, and they're not going to be something that you can share. Now, keep in mind, though, that you don't necessarily have to make this in the pelt. That's just the optimal. So if you had a flickering flame lying around on, say, a fire sorceress, you could transfer that over, and you could use that flickering flame on this build, and you'd just be missing out on a couple plus to skills, so it's not really that big of a deal. It's also not really a super expensive rune word, although you might be hurting after you make a freaking Phoenix, a Destruction, and an Infinity. At that point, you're kind of like, well, you're looking in your wallet and dust and a little moth flies out because you freaking broke from buying all the jaws and burrs and lows and vexes that you needed to make all the other stuff. So, maybe at that point a Paul and a Vex might not seem so inexpensive once you've emptied out your wallet. But overall, does the build work? Yes, the build does work. It works very well. The next hit delay changes have really changed the way that a lot of these skills are interacting with each other. The Volcano spam is definitely working a lot better than it did previously. The Fissure, of course, always worked. There's actually a couple other items that work really well in builds like this. So let's say, for instance, you wanted to do this build, but you didn't have all the runes right away, and you wanted something as a placeholder until you got all the runes. Well, there are two options. So let me show you the two options here of what you could potentially build if you wanted to. So first option is actually a fissure spamming item, which is pretty cheap to get your hands on because nobody wants the damn thing. It is called the Earth Shifter Thundermaul. The Earth Shifter Thundermaul does have a massive 253 strength requirement, which is kind of insane. But one thing it does have is a 25% chance to cast level 14 Fissure on striking, which means that you could potentially build a Fire Claws Druid, use this for a little while until you could get your hands on the runes to actually craft your Phoenix and your Destruction. This way, you're spamming level 14 Fissures, and all you would have to do really is just make sure that you're building the synergies for Fissure so that you're getting the maximum damage output from this. This is a pretty cool one in terms of damage output because you do get the Fissure is this really nice big AoE area, so it actually hits pretty much everything around you. If you guys haven't actually paid attention to the way that Fissure works, let me take you to Canyon of the Magi real quick. And we're going to cast Fissure on the ground real quick. Where's my Fissure? So this is what Fissure looks like. It's a nice big area. It stays up for a pretty long period of time, as you can see. And as a Earth Shifter Druid, if you did this same build, but instead of Phoenixes, you ran the Earth Shifter, you would be spamming these Fissures all over the place. It would look something like this. And they would just be constantly dishing out massive amounts of damage while you're also meleeing. Works very well as a secondary AoE damage, and could very easily carry you until you manage to get your upgraded Destruction and your Phoenix. And could even work as an offhand weapon if you wanted to just play around with it, because while these two are definitely nice, this one just has a lot more like focused like AoE damage, like within the given area that you're sitting in, and you're going to be attacking really fast, and you're going to be spamming these a hell of a lot faster than I can. So I have a 1.6 second delay with mine. But if you were utilizing the Earth Shifter at a 25% chance to cast this, using things like Fury and Fire Claws, you're probably going to be proccing like freaking 3 or 4 of these, like, all the time. Like, within, like, 1 or 2 attack cycles, there'll be, like, 3 or 4 of them on the ground at a 25% chance. So, you're going to see tons of these level 14 fissures all over the place utilizing the Earth Shifter Thunderball. Now, I don't think this one is technically going to be better damage than the Destruction and the Phoenix, but it'll tide you over until you get your hands on it. And yes, you could Zod an ethereal one. That would be an interesting option. So if you happen to get your hands on an ethereal Earth Shifter, which are pretty rare, you would have a lot more physical damage with this particular build too, which is interesting. The +7 elemental skills doesn't really help a lot, but it will give you +7 to Armageddon, which is a nice little boon, because as we talked about earlier, Armageddon is the one skill that you have to cast yourself. So that's also kind of nice. So you get a nice little bump to your Armageddon damage. All right, so I'm going to take a quick break here, and then probably in about 30 minutes we're going to start streaming for Ladder Season 4. Ladder Season 4 doesn't start until 8 o'clock EST, which isn't for, what, 5 to 6, 6 to 7, so about 2.5 hours. But I got to get started forming groups, getting our kinship ready for Ladder, you know, making sure that everybody's signed up and on the roster and whatnot. And I believe we have about 47 people. I don't know how many of those are actually going to show up for launch, but I mean, just taking the 47 that we have divided by 8, we're looking at about 5, maybe 6 groups of people, which is going to be a pretty big run. I'm going to be starting with a Fire Druid. I actually might do this build. Depends on how many freaking lows and burrs and shots I could get my hands on. But I'll probably make the Phoenix first, because I'm going to need that as a Fire Druid anyway. And then eventually, if I can scrape together the runes to make a Destruction, I might actually build this build for Season 4. I'm going to see if I can pull it off. Anyway, as always, I do appreciate you guys and gals watching my videos, even when it's just a silly Theorycraft. And keep your eyes open for the Barbarian Theorycraft, which is going to be up probably right after I finish this. I'll actually probably just go ahead and make it live right when I end this. As always, thanks for watching.